Supreme Court Justice Samuel Alito has been under fire for a recording in which he apparently endorsed the view that America needs to return to a place of, quote, godliness. And while it should be a shock that one of the most powerful figures in the country, a man who is supposed to be impartial, so openly embraced the idea of a theocratic state, it was not, in fact, much of a shock at all. The right's embrace of overtly Christian nationalist ideology has been on the rise, and it's a trend that many historians and experts have named an existential threat to our democracy. Christian nationalism is based on the myth that America was founded as a Christian nation. It puts Christianity at the center of American life and aims to install believers in all areas of public life, including, and perhaps especially, in government. The threat of Christian nationalism really hit the mainstream on January 6, 2021, when, in addition to the more notorious groups like the Proud Boys and the Three Percenters, those carrying religious symbols, and specifically Christian symbols, featured prominently among the protesters. At the Capitol that day, insurrectionists held aloft Bibles as they stormed Congress. They prayed in the Senate, and they stated on video their goals to elevate Christianity as an explicitly American principle and to drive out, quote, demonic forces. But it's not just insurrectionists. The ideology of Christian nationalism has clearly infiltrated every level of government, and that's the goal. While we as a nation generally rely on the constitutional promise of a separation of church and state, there's an ever-growing group of people who not only seek to undermine that separation, but who believe that America is, in fact, an inherently Christian nation. And this isn't just some fringe ideology. It's existed in various iterations throughout modern history, and today it enjoys widespread support. Just last year, a survey by the Public Religion Research Institute found that 40% of Americans believe that our laws should be based on Christian values. Meanwhile, Christian nationalist rhetoric has become increasingly common in the mainstream and among prominent and powerful political figures.
God created government. And the fact that we have let it go into the possession of others is heartbreaking for those of us who understand.
We were a nation founded upon not the words of our founders, but the words of God, because He wrote the Constitution.
And by the way, Christianity will have power without having to form, because if I'm there, you're going to have plenty of power.
Joining me now to discuss is Anthea Butler, professor in American social thought and chair of the Religious Studies Department at the University of Pennsylvania. She's also the author of several important books, including White Evangelical Racism, The Politics of Morality in America. She's also an MSNBC contributor. Let's talk about white Christian nationalism. We know that Christianity in the United States is enjoyed by a wide number of people, including African Americans. Yet African Americans seem divorced from this strain of Christianity. So can you tell us more about the racial valence of Christian nationalism and its agenda?
Sure. Thank you, Melissa. Let me say about Christian nationalism, first of all, it's a belief that the founders and the framers wanted this to be a Christian nation. But more than that, what white Christian nationalism is saying is that they want white people to be in power, that they are the ones who have the true Christianity, and that if you accede to what they want, especially white male leadership, then the country will be safe. The country will be in the right hands. And I think that part of this has to do a lot with our history. I talk about this in my book, White Evangelical Racism, about how white evangelicals especially thought that they were the ones who were able to bring God into this nation. And so when you hear talk from people like the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, and others talking about America as a Christian nation, what they're also saying to you is that they want white men to be part of that leadership in this Christian nation.
Christian nationalists and those who subscribe to that ideology are a minority of this country, but they're nonetheless a significant minority. And we're seeing more and more people in real positions of prominence and power embracing Christian nationalist values. We just showed the clips from Tom Parker, Donald Trump. How did this happen? How have Christian nationalists managed to infiltrate mainstream political thought?
Well, I think one of the things that we have to realize is that they've always been here. And when we think about this, if we go back even to the 1970s with the rise of the moral majority, Ronald Reagan, who played a lot to evangelicals and others, this rise of Christian nationalism that seems really surprising to people has always been here. We've always had people to think about the nation as being a theocracy. Now, here's the interesting point about right now. We're hearing more talk about this because Donald Trump himself has said that he is going to give Christians power. He wants to give evangelicals power in this nation. And so let me give you an example about this. We just had the Texas GOP convention a few weeks ago, and there was lots of Christian nationalist talk, people talking about how America needed to be a Christian nation, that they were going to bring God back into the country. We can see this throughout book bannings and all the other things. You can just think about this with, of course, the fall of Roe, the Mifepristone decision this week, although we still get the pill. This is an ongoing project by Christian nationalists to turn this country into a theocratic state, first of all, and secondarily, to make everyone else live under their kind of moral codes, which they don't live under themselves.
Well, we know that. Can we talk a little bit about Project 2025? This is, of course, the right-wing plan to create and consolidate power in the presidency if Donald Trump should win in 2024. How does Christian nationalism factor into Project 2025 and its blueprint for the Trump presidency, should one happen?
Well, I think the first thing you have to realize is that Project 2025 is a project of the Heritage Foundation, which is an explicitly Christian organization. The head of that organization is also Catholic. We don't talk about Catholics in the midst of this very much, but I think we need to. Secondarily, there are going to be loyalty oaths. People need to make a loyalty oath to Donald Trump, first of all. Secondarily, the ways in which they're going to ask people to be part of the government and the restructuring of the government means that you have to accede to certain kind of moral beliefs. And I think that's going to privilege Christians a lot more. And it's very hard for people to think about wading through the 925 pages of this document. But I think it's really important to see, for instance, the Justice Department being under the president, how different people are going to be fired and how other offices are going to be reconstructed, what's going to happen to education. All of these things are of a piece because they are going to be structured onto principles that Christians and explicitly people who have worked with Heritage Foundation and other organizations like Turning Point have structured in order for them to have power.
That is Dr. Anthea Butler. She's the author of many books about religion in our public life and most recently, white evangelicalism. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Melissa.